Thank you.
Good.
Now, talking about the global warming, the accepted theory is that carbon dioxide and other gases produced by us horrible human beings, cars, planes, coal-powered power stations, and so on. However, I've read an article by 3 Danish scientists who say that most of the global warming is caused by the interaction of cosmic rays coming from exploded stars and our sun. When the sun is in a vigorous mood, it causes more warmth. When it's not, when it's quiet, there's less warmth. And they claim that most of the changes in climate, most of them, are caused by the sun and cosmic rays rather than they are man-made. What do you say to that?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question, and it's great when we get these things out in the open so we can discuss them.
Sure.
So I think this is a really good example of the lengths that people will go to deny the fact that we have a responsibility here and that we have, in fact, changed the atmosphere. So my co-author on Merchants of Doubt is Eric M. Conway. He works for NASA. And one of the things that NASA does is it measures solar radiation. NASA has had highly accurate satellites up in the atmosphere since the 1970s measuring solar irradiation, and we know from that data that there has been no general increase in solar irradiance over the period of time during which we've seen
Now, I
this
should point out
warming
that
effect.
the sun is not a constant candle,
No,
and it varies
right.
by roughly 0.1% over an 11-year cycle.
Right. So we know, like the climate system itself, we know there's natural variability in solar irradiance. But what we're talking about is a trend. We're trying to explain this trend of the steadily increasing warming that we've observed over the last 50 or 60 years. And that trend, there is no increase in solar irradiance that would explain that observed trend. And in fact, in the last 10 to 15 years, solar irradiance has actually gone down a little bit, even while we've seen warming continuing. The warming would probably actually be greater were the sun not in a slight declining period right now. Now, I want to just say one other thing about what you just said, Andrew. So you used the phrase, us horrible human beings.
Yes.
And I'm glad you said that, because I think this is really the crux of the denial issue. Because global warming makes people feel bad because they feel that they're being told that they're bad people, that we're horrible, that we're doing all these terrible things. But of course, I spend most of my time with climate scientists, and climate scientists almost never talk about horrible human beings unless it's their department chair or their dean or the president of their university. You know, for scientists, this isn't about whether human beings are good or bad. It's about the laws of physics and chemistry. It's about the chemistry of the atmosphere and what's happening to our climate system. Yes, it does mean that there are consequences that we need to talk about, but personally, I think human beings are by and large great. I love Dr. Karl here, who's sitting in the room with me. So it's not about people being horrible. It's about people having lived a lifestyle that made us prosperous, made us wealthy, made us happy. It's been good. By and large, we've had a good run. But now we've discovered that there's this little problem, and we need to do something about it.
Okay. Now one other thing, Andrew, you mentioned the paper by the 3 Danish scientists on the cosmic rays.
I can give you their names if you like.
Can you give me the date of the paper?
No. I remember reading it. I took their names and Knud Lassen.
Okay, the point is
Christensen and Henrik
Svensmark. And Henrik Svensmark co-wrote a book with Nigel Calder, who's a British science writer, which we talked about with Nigel on this program, called The Chilling Stars. And that book is very much still out there.
And you know, it's interesting also about cosmic rays. People love to blame cosmic rays for lots of things, just like they love to blame volcanoes. In our book, we show how practically every major environmental problem there's been in the last 50 years, someone has tried to blame volcanoes. And, you know, volcanoes are like the scapegoat of the planet because we know they exist and we know they do put dust and sulfur and
they
fluorine.
can cool down the planet, like the Pinatubo event.
Right, but the Pinatubo event, the cooling lasted about 2 years. It's a very short-term event, and although volcanoes do a lot of damage, they don't explain global warming, they don't explain acid rain. There's just a lot of things they don't explain.
To sum up, do you say the cosmic rays, in conjunction with the sun's vigorous sort of moods, play very little part in global warming?
Yeah, well, the point I was getting to was that the paper was written about a decade ago. And the other scientists have gone through it and basically said, an interesting idea, completely wrong. So it's been thoroughly debunked in the peer-reviewed literature since then.
Well, I bow to your greater knowledge.
Thanks for taking the time to download this BBC Radio 5 Live podcast. To find other programmes you might be interested in, click bbc.co.uk/5live, where you'll also find our terms of use.